Hey, what's up everybody? You're probably wondering why I'm doing a video at 3:50 in the morning. Well, I took a nap during the day. So I figured, you know what? I might as well get something off my chest. Now I'm a little awake still. Not saying I'm not going to conk out anytime soon, because I probably will. But I was just watching one of Angry Joe's rants, if you will, of something more recent. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've already ranted rationally on something, on a few things earlier today, or yesterday I should say. So I figured, you know what? Maybe it's time I did a rant on something that a lot of people apparently have been having issues with. You know, recently, as of late last year, a certain head writer, and we all know who he is, took a certain popular character of a certain comic book and overall franchise, a character that has established themselves as being a popular character, as being the second most popular character in the franchise history, comics, games, cartoon adaptations, whatever. And late last fall, as we all know that probably subscribe to the comic book, he did something that a previous writer had done before, but only did it for half, if you will, of the issue that he did it in. But yet, this writer has done it to the point that the fan base is sort of split. There are some in the fan base that like what he's done to this character, and there are others that don't. Me, I'm one of them that don't like what he's done, but I've been honest and said, you know what, I'm just going to see where he goes from here with it. I'm not going to say anything else than that. But what surprises me, folks, what surprises me, and I've said this before, is if you go to a place like DeviantArt or any of the fan-related websites based around this franchise, there are still fans drawing fan art of said character the way said character was before said character was put in its current situation. In other words, fans are still continuously drawing this character as they know this character, not as what we see in the comics right now. And what's even more funny about it is you got these same fans drawing the character as what they feel the character will look like once the character is possibly restored from its current situation. In other words, they're kind of predicting the style, the design the character will have after it's all said and done, should, and I say should because there are some that don't believe it's going to happen, but there are a lot that do, should the character get restored. And I also say that because I know the head writer and those in charge are at the comic book company that publishes this book or publishes this comic. I know they want to try to continuously throw people off, so that's why I'm saying should. But to me you would think, so to me you would think the head writer, knowing that this person even has their own DeviantArt account. That's no lie. They have their own DeviantArt account, so does their head artist have their own DeviantArt account, and you would think by looking all around the DeviantArt site that they would notice that this character is being drawn by fans as the character originally was before its current situation. You would think perhaps said head writer would get it through the skulls that perhaps doing this was not probably the best idea. Now again, I do understand and respect the fact that, as he has put it, and as other comic book writers from other comic books publications out there have even put it to their fans, sometimes you have to shake up the status quo. You have to do things to the characters that have never been done before, nor did you ever think would be done, and yet are being done. Now again, I understand that and I respect it. But to further indicate, there are still fans out there, whether it's this Pacific Comic I'm talking about, or other comic book publications and titles, there are still fans out there that don't like what has occurred to their favorite characters, or what has happened. They don't like it. They have voiced their opinions. In fact, one of the leading comic book companies in the world, and I'll say the name, DC Comics. DC Comics has done things in the past decade, if you will, and even beyond that, or before this past decade, I should say, even before this past decade, they have done things that have been controversial, and they have done things that fans have either liked and other fans have not. You take a look at the countdown, the original 52s, if you will, the countdowns, if you will. Some fans liked it, some fans didn't. You take a look at the new 52s. Some fans liked it, some fans didn't. It's like this one head writer, who, believe it or not, was once a fan himself, said in a response to everyone at DeviantArt. He said that there's no pleasing anyone in the middle. There's no middle ground, if you will, with what's going on. And and by reading that, you would think this individual would get it through their head that if they're not going to please the fan base with what they're doing, then why are they doing it? Why are they constantly taking characters that don't need to be changed, that don't need to have certain bad things happen to them? A shake-up now and then is good, I will admit that. But overall, have bad things, other bad things and situations occur to them, you think they realize it's not going to work. Now, there are some comic book titles out there, some comic book publications out there, no doubt about it, there are adaptations of different franchises. There's no doubt about that. Take a look at some of the most popular video game franchises out there. Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat. You know, these fighting games, these well-known fighting games, along like, let's say, King of Fighters. These well-known fighting games have had comic book adaptations, they've been adapted basically into comic books. And unlike certain game companies, there have been comic book adaptations of these games to where the gaming company has shown a little bit of leniency. They have allowed the writers and the artists, more so the writers, to do what they want. I was watching one of Linkara's reviews where he was reviewing a Street Fighter comic book. And there was a scene, a few panels, if you will, a scene, if you will, of Chun-Li coming on to Ryu, if you will. So, you would think that because she's one of the people that in the games he has to fight, you think they wouldn't allow that. But yet they show a little leniency and they allow it to happen. The point I'm getting at, and I even did a video and a written text about this, but this so-called gaming company has a lot of restrictions, not a lot, but has certain restrictions and mandates that not just me, but a lot of people that are fans of the comic, whether they like what's going on right now or they don't, or they're in the middle of it, or they're in the middle kind of indifferent about it. The one thing they all agree on is that this gaming company needs to stop mandating and restricting certain things. A few restrictions, minor restrictions, maybe here and there is okay. But let the head writer or writers or whoever does the writing have a little bit of leniency and do what they have to do, even if it involves your characters that appear specifically in your games. Allow them to do that. Allow them to have a little bit of leniency. I mean, I would. But you know, that's not the only thing about what's going on in this comic or any other comic that's had similar situations and events. The one constant thing about comic books, whether they're adaptions of video games or other franchises or the original stories of original characters, the one thing that's always been constant is fans' overall debate, is the comic book fandom's overall debate. Whether the comic book, like I said, is based off a video game or another franchise, like a card game or such, or if it is, like I said, original, all-out original, the one thing that fans have constantly debated about for generations is romance. Basically, the one constant word for the female romantic lead in a comic book, whether it's an adaptation or original story, is they usually call that character a Mary Sue. My question, first of all, is where the fuck did the term Mary Sue come from? I mean, I understand that it associates with they associate it with characters that, as they say, are bitchy, complaining, spotlight stealing, you know, etc., 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 if you will. In their opinions, that is. In their opinions. And yet, you have other people that say that those characters that are accused of being Mary Sues, or being written as Mary Sues, are not Mary Sues. I mean, you even got the male characters, the male leads, if you will, being accused of being John Does or whatever, if you will. John Sues, if you will. I don't know. And fans, and again, just like with the characters that are accused of being Mary Sues, there are fans that defend those characters that are being called John Sues or John Franks or whatever you want to call them, because they overall will say the same thing about both sides. You know what they will say, folks? They will say what I'm about to say, and well, probably not exactly what I would say, but somewhat in that category, somewhat in this category, and in this line, if you will, this thin line. The fact is, you can't have a comic book, original story or not, adapted or not, you cannot have a comic book without some kind of romance in there. Whether it's strong romance, minimum romance, small romance, crushes, whatever you want to call it. You cannot have a successful comic book without that. You cannot. Let's take a look at X-Men. X-Men, for example. Do you think it would have been the success it was if it didn't have its romantic entanglements? Its Mary Sues, its John Sues, John Franks, whatever you want to call it? Do you think it would not have been success? No. No. Let me explain. It would have been a success, despite what you say. It would have been a success even with it all. Even with it all. Because like I was asking, do you think a comic book like that, an overall, one of the most popular comic book franchises in history, would have been a success which is, you know, being action adventure? Maybe so. But you gotta have romance in there. You gotta have drama in there. You gotta have comedy. And that's what they have. Every comic book, whether it's a serious comic book, whether it's a comic book that you gotta take serious because the characters and the setting and the stories have to be taken seriously, cannot be a successful comic book without the added ingredients of romance. and without the added ingredients of Mary Sue's, John Frank's, John Sue's, whatever you want to call them. It cannot be a success without those. And more so, it cannot be a success without having love triangles or love squares or whatever you want to call it. It cannot be a comic book, original or adapted, cannot be successful without romantic couples. It cannot be successful without that. It cannot be successful without love triangles or love squares. The thing is, folks, whether people like it or not, comic books, whether they're original stories or they're comic books based on video games, movies, television shows, cartoons, whatever, cannot succeed without romance. Everybody knows that. So for those that complain and say, you know, the Mary Sue's, the John Sue's, John Frank's, that stuff has to go, that stuff has to end in a comic book, hey, you guys, hey, I'll say this, you guys have the right to say that all you want. You guys have a right. And you know, maybe you prefer it to be more just action adventure. You know, go on the adventure, go on the mission, whatever, get it done, go home, that's it. You know, and that would be fine. But the thing is, even those people, even the people that have created comic books, even created television shows in which sometimes comic books are based off of, or even video games, they even have come out and said that you could have the event, come out and said that you can't just have them go, you can't just have the character or characters go on an adventure, oh, they complete the mission, whatever, come home and that's it. You can't just have that. You gotta have conflict, you gotta have romance, you gotta have all the ingredients, you gotta have the total package, if you will. And everybody, I'm sure, watching this video knows that. I know that. I mean, you can't have the comic book, the said comic book that I'm talking about, with a character like in their video game, which is adapted, which it's based off of, going from one end of the level to the next, and that's it. You can't just have one issue of a comic book being like that. You can't. You gotta have more to it. You gotta expand. You gotta go beyond the world that you see in the franchise, in the movie, cartoon, game, whatever that the comic book is based off of. You gotta go further in depth. You gotta further explore what else is out there. The truth is, folks, no matter what we say, no matter what we do, no matter what we say or do, there's always going to be things we like and don't like about certain things in comic books. This certain comic book that I'm talking about with a certain head writer, whether I like what he's done or not, whether anybody likes what he's done or not, was reasonable enough to say at the end of his little explanation on DeviantArt, like I said at the beginning, and I quote what he said, there's no pleasing anyone. There's no middle ground, basically. Now sometimes when that happens, yes, you would think they should go back and rethink what they've done. Or they should hurry up and do what many fans want them to do. But we don't know exactly when or where that situation is going to occur. And the one thing that a lot of fans get pissed off about is the fact that even though some fans, many fans, will like being pulled by a string and drug on for the ride of their life, if you will, with what's going on in the comic books, some will not be so tolerant. Some will be like, okay, enough is enough. Give us a straight answer. Don't play mind games. Stop throwing puzzles. Stop throwing this and that. You know, give us a straight answer kind of deal. And that's all people want. That's all people want sometimes. So again, just like he said, just like the head writer said, there's no pleasing anybody, there's no middle ground. But whatever happens in the next 7 to 8 months, you know, is totally up to what the head writer does, not just for this comic, but it's totally up to any head writer of any comic book publication, original story or adapted. So that's all I'm going to say on this little comic book discussion rant, if you will. So peace out, God bless, and I'm going to try to rest for a while.